Good morning, everybody. Welcome to the Scrutiny Performance Panel for Education. This is the first meeting of the year, so we just need, before we do anything else, to confirm the chair or the convener of the meeting. Councillor Lyndon Jones has agreed to chair again this year, unless there's anybody else who would like to put their name forward. Otherwise, if councillors Andacopty would like to indicate that they're happy with that. Are we okay? Yeah, great. There we are. Okay. Thank you very much. I'll hand over to Councillor Jones now.
Great, thank you very much. Could I say, as you know, we can't say the new hybrid system. Looking at my notes, but with this system, can I ask you all to, obviously if you're online, raise your hand, which you're used to doing, and could I ask the people in the room to introduce themselves, because otherwise you can't very often see that online, and obviously that would be useful. So I start. I'm Lyndon Jones.
Michelle Roberts, Scrutiny Officer.
Rodney Jones, Head of Achievement and Partnership in Education.
Sarah Hughes, Team Manager for Education Strategy.
Robert Smith, Cabinet Member for Education, Learning and Skills.
Fine, thank you very much. Could I ask Michelle to read out the apologies we've received?
Yes, we had apologies from councillors Susan Jones, Mike Day, Adam Davis and Sarah Keaton.
Okay, are there any others? Okay. Sorry, are there any disclosures of a personal and prejudicial interest? The only thing I would say is on the future programme, it does mention Bishopston Comprehensive School, which somebody, not me, had suggested, and I'm a governor there, so I will, make that declaration. And if there aren't any others, then obviously there's a prohibition of whip votes. And we move on to the minutes of the last meeting. Are there, and could I go through these if they're a correct record? Page 1. We're happy. Page 2 and page 3. And if that's the case, could I have a person to propose that they're okay? Don't be shy.
Who was at the last meeting?
I propose them, Chair.
Thank you very much. Great, thank you. The next item on the agenda is public question time. There haven't been any members of the public who've been in touch. I think on the list it said initially Mike Hayes, a member of the public, but Mike Hayes is from Eston, and he sometimes looks at what we say and what we do at these meetings after the meeting, and it had actually come out there, so I did wonder who that was. So great point. Thanks for that. The next, we're going through it a rate of knots. The next item on the agenda is letters. Sorry, I should have said the letters before the. Has anybody got any comments on the letters that I've sent to the cabinet member? No. Okay. Well, the next item on the agenda is additional learning needs reform update, and I'm very pleased to welcome Kate Phillips. And in fact, I saw Kate here yesterday as well, so it's obviously good to see you. Who's head of vulnerable learners, and Alison, who's head of additional learning needs, and obviously Councillor Robert Smith and Helen Morgan, Rees, our director. Helen and Robert, do you want to come in first?
No, just to introduce the item. Obviously, we are aware of the immense amount of work that's gone into preparing the ground for this and moving to a completely new system with radical transformation. And I know there's been, as I said, an immense amount of work undertaken by our officers to support the schools in this. I think it's fair to say it's an ongoing piece of work, but a worthwhile piece of work, and we are clearly on a journey of reform. So I think if we pass over to Kate, she'll be able to talk us through the report, Chair.
Thank you very much. Helen, do you want to come in now or during or after?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Just to give apologies from Alison, who's not with us today as the ALN manager in Swansea. But just to echo some of the Cabinet members' words there in terms of how we've responded to the transformation agenda that is the Additional Learning Needs and Education Tribunal Act requirements. So we did have a good endorsement this time last year from our regulators in terms of the progress in responding to that particular reform agenda. And we have not rested on our laurels since that time. So during the last year as well, we've undertaken almost a cherry picking exercise really to understand what's left of the programme of change that we must focus our attention on now. There has been really good traction in many areas, but we are able to focus on other areas now that remains within the programme. Kate would provide that detail. Thank you.
Thank you, Helen. Kate.
Thank you. Thanks very much. What I'll do, if it's okay, Chair, is just talk through the report and draw out kind of some of the key highlights for it, because I'm sure you've had an opportunity to have a look in advance. But the first part of the report really just gives that legal context and background around the transformation from the old legislation into the new legislation. And as Helen says, we've been through a really extensive transformation programme, and the last ALN strategy ran between 2019 2022. So we've now completed that work, but exactly as Helen's outlined, really, we're moving into the next phase and looking what we need to do next to strengthen our offer and to make sure we're meeting all of the additional requirements of the reform. So while we have a few small elements from the previous strategy that may be outstanding, we've transferred those into our new strategy, which covers the period from 2022 to 2027. And we've identified 4 priority areas within that strategy. So we'll be working around a priority related to schools, to post-16, to collaboration, and to early years. So what I've done in the report is just provide some updates for those 4 priority areas, and then I'll just share with you at the end some of our successes and some of our kind of current challenges that we're working on as well. So in terms of schools, we've done quite a significant amount of work in relation to developing the workforce in terms of readiness for ALNet. So there's been a lot of training on offer, a really extensive training menu. So what we want to focus on next really is looking at quality assurance to ensure that we support a consistent approach to ALN provision across Swansea. So what that's going to include is a focus on our universal provision. That's the provision that we expect that every school will have in place. And the enhanced provision, which is something additional that schools will be required to support children with additional learning needs. And there's a clear role for us as local authority central team to provide some support, guidance, development opportunities, and really kind of quality assure that process. So how we've begun to do that, we've got some moderation exercises taking place, supporting schools. We're also developing provision maps. And what we found really from our work to date is that there's still a lot of work to do. It's very new. And it's challenging to get it right, but there's a real willingness to do that. And we've got the expertise in place to support development of those consistent approaches. So we also want to develop closer links with our school improvement colleagues in order to provide some training on ALN provision to make sure we really embed that across all discussions at school leadership level. We talked yesterday about the transformational project around supporting sufficient specialist places in Swansea, and quality assurance is a key element of that in terms of ensuring that all provision at every stage of our graduated response model ensures consistent offers available to all learners, whichever school they attend, wherever that may be. And finally, in relation to this work, the theme around schools, we've got a pilot underway in relation to home to school transport for children who attend a special school, and also for children who attend one of our specialist teaching facilities in a primary school. So what this pilot has involved is the schools using their own minibuses, which are staffed by school employees. And what we are experiencing is that this provides a much more positive experience for learners in terms of their well-being. So they're met by school staff, by familiar faces. It's reducing journey time, and it's used to provide a link between home and school with familiar staff who know the individual children's needs. So we are also anticipating that we will make some financial savings, which is a huge benefit, obviously, in the current climate. And the schools are reporting that site management issues have been minimised. So the number of vehicles on site at the end of the school day has been minimised in a positive way, and the project supports the climate change agenda. So far that the pilot has been very positive. We're quite excited about seeing how we can roll that out further in the future. So if it's okay, I'll touch now on our post-16 work. So this is a new element of work for us with implementation from September this year. So we're in a intense period of planning at the moment. Welsh Government have shared with us some proposed funding models for post-16 places in independent specialist institutions. Swansea is seen as a model of good practice, so we're pleased about that. However, we are mindful that any potential benefit needs to be considered in the context of increasing costs. So we know that that's going to be challenging across our independent placements. So strengthening our local offer is really a priority for us. What we really want to achieve wherever possible is an offer in Swansea for children and young people who live in the area to be educated within their communities. So there's some work taking place around those requests for specialist placements, and we're working with colleagues in social services and health as well to undertake a drawing up of a memorandum of understanding. We've also got some officers working on post-16 guidance document that'll explain the options available to post-16 learners who have ALN, as well as providing further information and signposting. So we want to make sure that all of our opportunities are really kind of mapped out, and that it's easy for young people to understand, and their families to understand what's available and where. So again, officers from Swansea are meeting colleagues across Wales to make sure that we are sharing and benefiting from that national experience, to make sure that we've got those good offers in place and that we can draw on the expertise available. We've got positive working relationships between Gower College and Swansea, and that work stream is developing well in terms of those relationships. It is worth noting that most local authorities in Wales have created a designated post-16 officer post to manage the work stream. In Swansea, it's actually being absorbed by officers who are managing it in addition to their substantive duties. So it does mean that our progress is a little bit slower, but we have a level of confidence that we are working with quality and making sure that we're getting that offer right. I'll touch on our work with the local health board, some positive developments in terms of an invitation from the health board for heads of service from both Swansea and East Port Talbot to sit on their ALN strategic board. So that's been really helpful in terms of working through some of the challenges that the health board have in terms of their readiness for ALNet, and just improving those relationships and the dialogue. We're also reviewing our current speech and language service level agreement. There's been a history really of the local authority funding work in the health board, which should really fall under their statutory responsibility. However, we do recognise that the NHS has faced really significant challenges over the last few years, So we need to be very careful about the way we manage this, and just, kind of pulling a plug would not be appropriate, and indeed could be risky for children and young people in terms of the provision offer. So we're managing that very carefully. Our senior educational psychologist is linking with the health board as well around a review of the referral process for the neurodevelopmental assessment pathway. So we're hoping that that's going to be beneficial in terms of improved referral mechanisms. I think, we know from previous discussions at Scrutiny that the waiting lists for ND pathways with the health board are long. So anything that we can contribute from a local authority perspective to support them to reduce those waiting lists should be beneficial, and we're keen to engage with them on that. And I sit on the regional autism strategy group, and again we're working quite creatively to find solutions to provide pre-diagnosis support, because the group's got a key focus to prevent escalation onto the waiting list as well as reducing waiting time. So it's a kind of a dual purpose then. And finally, in terms of our strands of the strategy, early years is the final area. There's continued support provided for early years settings from the ALN team, and this includes funding, training, advice and information. We identify training needs through the liaison with the settings and try to be as flexible as possible to meet the needs of those early years settings, because they can be quite different. Specialist staff in the local authority are available for regular kind of question and answer sessions to provide support and to undertake some of the moderating activities in relation to IDPs. A key kind of focus really on transition and information sharing between schools and early years providers, to make sure that the transition arrangements are as strong as they can possibly be. And then our early years process pathways have regular kind of review and monitoring to ensure they can continue to meet demand across the service. So in terms of the strands of the strategy, that kind of outlines the key work that we're undertaking at the moment. I think, I've identified a couple of successes and some challenges, which I hope are helpful to share with you. I think we have a level of confidence now that our project to support sufficient specialist places is gathering some momentum, and it's on track to meet the milestones identified in the timeline. It's a significant transformational project. So, likely to be something we'll be talking about for a number of years, but it's on track, and that's positive. I think we're also very pleased with the work underway in relation to moderation, quality assurance and supporting schools to achieve consistent, equitable offers for learners. That's really important to us, and there's been a lot of work undertaken there. And our collaboration with the health board is strengthening, and we are developing productive partnerships. There are a few challenges still. Our online solution provided to schools to support IDP production, that's individual development plan productions, has not been as successful as we had hoped. It's been quite challenging, and schools are struggling to use the tool. So we had an officer who was seconded to support with this, and she's due to return to school, although we've been able to source some additional grant funding now to extend that post, so that's a positive. But I guess that kind of reflects the second challenge, which is around budget pressures. Welsh Government has provided grant funding, but it is temporary and uncertain. And we know that our core budget isn't sufficient to support the current staffing needs. We've got some grant funded posts in the team which are considered really essential to the success of delivering the requirements of ALNet. So there will be a need to refine the structure of the existing ALN team, and we have to do that within the existing budget envelope to make sure that we can, meet our responsibilities. And I think the other thing that's important to note in terms of a challenge is that despite the intention really of the Welsh Government legislation to establish a less adversarial system, what we have seen is a significant number in the of the requests for tribunals. And this places pressures on services. And again, it's kind of highlighted a need for an internal review of processes and procedures to ensure that we can provide the appropriate level of resource to that important element of work. So kind of, you know, linking to our review of the structures and the way in which we're funding our team, we need to consider that that's an increase in work that the Act was kind of intending to reduce, but it actually hasn't. It's become greater. So that's kind of the key elements of the report, really. I'm very happy to take any questions if that's helpful.
Great, thanks very much, Kate, for that you know, really informative brief. Any questions?
Sorry, Chair.
Yeah,
yes, I've got my hand
Yvonne.
up. Yeah, okay, thanks. Kate, thanks again. Second day running for a fully comprehensive report. But, okay, I had quite a few, but I'll just ask you, for the post-16, you explained that we are going to not employ extra staff, let me put it like that. And so we're going to run with the ones we've got. And I was wondering, I can sort of live with that, but are we going to be having more stringent supervision, let's say, of the current staff? And not so much the staff, but the organizations that we use. You know, are the staff going to start being a bit more, I'll stick with stringent, of what the organizations we employ to work with post-16s, that they are fulfilling their side of the bargain. Because, yeah, okay, I won't say because what, but.
Sure. Do you want me to answer that bit first? Does that help? Yeah. So yeah, we did make the decision not to create a bespoke post for that, and that was a funding financial decision because we don't have the resource available. However, the member of staff is undertaking that as a very experienced ALN manager, and part of the work that we're doing in relation to post-16 is exactly kind of what you're outlining around working with all of our key delivery partners to make sure the offer to children with additional learning needs is as strong as it can be. So I think we're not there yet. You know, this is a piece of work that is in development, but I think that that kind of concern that you've identified is something that this is intended to do. It's intended to join up services better and to make sure that there's more opportunities for training, development, for scrutiny, then for want of a better word, of partner agencies or services to make sure that what we're offering is something that we're satisfied with.
Sorry, Chair, could I just, it's not, sure. I'm not concerned about what we're offering. It's more about the people we employ to deliver it, that they're delivering it. That, yeah.
Sure.
But,
yeah.
And I understand it's money. I understand that it's as you explained yesterday, these things are going to take years or a while to fully be embedded. So I'm quite happy with that. Yes. Okay. Thanks very much.
Thank you.
Great, fine, thanks. Any other questions to Kate? No. Well, Kate, thank you very much indeed. Actually, if there aren't any other questions, obviously this is a you know, a moving brief. It's obviously work to do. It's work in progress, but a lot of work has actually been done. And thank you and the team for everything you've been doing to get us to this stage. Great, thank you very much.
Thank you. Thanks.
Great. The next item on the agenda is the new curriculum for Wales, and we had David Thomas can't be with us because he's actually, I understand, at a funeral, but very pleased that Rodri Jones is here, who's head of achievement and partnership. So Rodri, are you going to update us? And then Robert, do you want to come in first, or Helen?
Well, just to say, you know, again, this is something that we're very much on a journey, as are other authorities, other schools across the whole of Wales. It's an evolving piece of work as we move to embedding the new curriculum and making it a reality for every child and young and learner in every school in Swansea and across Wales. So I'm very pleased with the work that's going on, and I'm sure that Rodri will be able to describe in detail for the committee some of the key aspects of that work. So over to Rodri, Chair.
Rodri.
Yes, Chair. We last updated the Scrutiny Performance Panel, believe it or not, back in March 2022 on where we were with the delivery of the new curriculum, as we called it at the time, but now as we call it, the Curriculum for Wales. And back then, the panel welcomed the overall progress that had been made in relation to the introduction of the new curriculum for Wales, but they were still concerned with regard to the readiness of all schools at the time to introduce the new curriculum. Obviously, that was at a time when we were coming out of the global pandemic and where people's minds had so many different things to work on. But it's pleasing to note that it's a positive story that we have to tell here in Swansea. The panel were told that the Welsh Government do recognise that curriculum design is an ongoing cyclical process of engagement, design, planning, trialling and evaluation. And this is something that continues as we stand here today. Also, it's an iterative process with each school's curriculum continuing to evolve to meet the needs of their learners. The panel agreed and emphasised the importance of the role of school improvement advisors and our curriculum advisors in advising and getting those schools who may be finding it more challenging up to speed with their curriculum developments. They also agreed with officers at the time when they said school-to-school collaboration will be and is particularly beneficial in relation to curriculum developments, and that is something we are seeing on the ground every day. So where have we got to in Swansea by today in June 23? In 2022-23, the Curriculum for Wales became statutory for all primary schools in Wales and optional at that time for Year 7. In June 2022, with the Swansea-led Curriculum for Wales development programme, led by our school improvement advisors, nearly 250 senior leaders, including head teachers, attended that event to support a shared understanding of what progression looked like. In September 2023, the Curriculum for Wales will be statutory for all Year 7 and Year 8 pupils. So we'll see all learners in Swansea following from Years 7 and 8 and all through our primary schools following the Curriculum for Wales. Schools have been supported to write curriculum summary statements, and the school improvement team have provided templates to support this work. The work of the school improvement team continues to be impacted by the action, short of strike action that's being taken by the National Association of Head Teachers at this time. But in schools that haven't been impacted, the spring term support visits are focused on supporting schools to evaluate their progress towards the Curriculum for Wales implementation and the impact that is having on learners in the classroom. This has provided us with a clear work stream to provide professional learning around the developing understanding of schools' ability to be completely informed about the impact of their work on pupil progress. That's what we've seen to date when Estin, our inspector, to be going into our schools, is making sure that everything that's happening through the curriculum is having that impact in the classroom. And that is the clear path and the clear journey that we are looking to see. As a result of the work that we've been doing with our schools, the school improvement team have run a self-evaluation session, which received very good feedback from our head teachers and senior leaders, with a further session planned next week. This was focusing on areas that have become apparent from Estin inspections both here in Swansea and across Wales, as the team have evaluated what's been going on, and this gets fed back to our link inspector as well. As a result, schools that attended report being better placed to plan strategically within their schools, and our autumn visits will then evaluate the impact that this is having. Partneriaeth, our professional learning partner, in 22-23, the offer has been reviewed and robust evaluations are supporting our future plans. As Partneriaeth continues its relatively new journey, our principal school improvement advisor is heavily engaged in the early work to ensure that Swansea schools have access to effective professional learning for 23-24. Of course, we are working with our partners in Carmarthenshire and Pembrokeshire, but we are making sure that Swansea's voice is loud and clear around this table for the benefit of all our learners. The Principal School Improvement Advisor ensures that the Partneriaeth offer aligns with Swansea's 7 education priorities, which are outlined in the corporate plan. So what you will see is from reading the Swansea's corporate plan all the way through to what we are delivering in our schools, you will see that clear golden thread. Looking at the mandatory elements of the Curriculum for Wales, excellent work has been taken in place with the RVE advisor, who also works across the region, to make sure it's a professional learning offer both for RVE and RSE. This is an excellent service being provided by a Swansea-led officer at what has been a challenging time for our schools in delivering and providing what the mandatory elements that came with the Curriculum for Wales. What we've also seen is the strengthening of our networks. So you're looking at secondary schools. We have our SCASEN network, which brings together secondary deputy head teachers and senior leaders to being coordinated by the school improvement team and resulting then in ongoing professional dialogue between and across these settings. One thing we're very proud of in Swansea, there's no sense of our schools keeping good practice themselves. It's the absolute opposite, where they bring the challenges and successes to the table and are willing to share it across our schools for the benefit of all our learners. We meet with our primary head teacher representatives and the secondary head teacher groups regularly, with Curriculum for Wales as a key agenda item. Then that dialogue again informs the professional learning offer from Swansea and the region. Work is ongoing on literacy, numeracy and digital competency strategies, with a clear focus on pedagogy, which is a vital strand of Curriculum for Wales, to see how the teaching and learning is being actioned in our classrooms. We're seeing positive outcomes from a number of recent inspections, with very few recommendations across our schools being linked to the Curriculum for Wales. Swansea has an innovative approach to the delivery of Welsh Government's foundation learning modules, and as a result, schools like Portmead Primary School, that was visited by our education senior leadership team earlier this week, have made good progress towards effective implementation of strong teaching and learning policy. And as a result, learner progress is improving, and we're seeing that clearly in our classrooms. With the approval and the implementation of Swansea's Welsh Education Strategic Plan 2022 to 2032, we're maximising the impact of the Welsh Education Grant to support key initiatives such as the Siarter Iaith. And in the past few weeks alone, we have seen Gowerton Comprehensive School, Portmead Primary School and Penllygare Primary Schools all awarded the Gold Award for Siarter Iaith. They are some of the first schools in our region to be awarded this. And as a result of this work and then being awarded the Gold Award, part of keeping your Gold Award is to share that good practice with our schools, which will see the Welsh language embedded even further across our schools. And we'll continue to drive this initiative forward in the coming years. Finally, a final couple of points. We've developed curriculum maps to support schools in their design journey, which has seen Swansea practitioners leading this work across our region and beyond our region. And has also been a regular professional learning offer for governors, developed and delivered by the Principal School Improvement Advisor. As we all know, and as we've mentioned in the panel before, the important roles that governors have to play in the delivery of the curriculum on the ground. So looking at the next steps of where we go with the Curriculum for Wales and our work with our schools, there's a commitment to ensure that schools are well supported by the local authority and partneriaeth through an impactful professional learning offer. The school improvement team will focus on ensuring that schools embed self-evaluation and ongoing review around the effectiveness of their curriculum plans, with a direct impact on pupil progress and well-being. We will support schools to ensure they have been able to define how they will measure pupil progress and provide a graduated approach to professional learning so that schools can access support equitably and when they require it. We'll facilitate effective co-construction of the professional learning, as we've touched upon, and then maximise the available funding to support key areas such as literacy, numeracy and digital competency framework, and secure additional support to deliver the Welsh Education Strategic Plan. And we'll continue to promote and share effective practice through the head teacher meetings. When we look at our secondary schools, as they approach September, we're looking again to strengthen our focus with our secondary colleagues to make sure that they have the support they require as they move on that journey for the Curriculum for Wales. Thank you, Chair.
Great, thank you, Rhodri. And I think this committee, when we met the Pontedilys cluster to talk about the curriculum, we saw firsthand really at ways they were sharing, good practice and things that they felt weren't going well and how they overcame those challenges. So in fact, we saw that, as I say, saw that firsthand. But thank you for the presentation. Have we got any questions? Kick off with one or two then, while past people are thinking or whatever. You mentioned the readiness of schools, and at the end you mentioned the professional staff. Are the teaching staff in schools getting enough support? Because, as you know, that was our concern, to carry all the staff with us on that journey, really. And I just wondered if that was the case.
I definitely believe that's the case. What we're seeing on the ground now is that distributive leadership across our schools. So what we're not having the head teacher and senior leadership team alone driving this work. What we're seeing is teams within the school. And when we go out and visit our schools for updates and looking for best practice to share, we're not hearing from the head teacher. We're hearing from the staff on the ground about how they've worked collaboratively, and not only the teachers as well, how involved the support staff within the school are in that learning in the classroom. To take an example from the early years, what we're seeing in a few schools now is where it's pupil-led learning, and it becomes very much then a different skill that you need in those classrooms to spot those opportunities for the learning of the children, where the child is taking you on their learning journey every single day, and then you're using what they're doing in the classroom to find those learning experiences. So I think what we then see off the back of that is, because the cluster work that's continues to strengthen here in Swansea, is that schools and the teachers within the schools are then sharing it. But again, it's not just happening at that head teacher level. It's being allowed then to work at all levels within the school. So I think, as always, there's plenty more for us to do. And the important thing with the professional learning offer is that we continue to listen. We continue, if professional learning is delivered and it doesn't hit the mark with our schools, we evaluate, we go back and we see why didn't that work, and we find what will work in the future. But you're absolutely right, it's important that that professional learning offer goes across the board, from our teaching assistants, our teachers, and the senior leaders in our schools as well.
Councillor Angela O'Connor.
Hi, thank you. It's great that you just said that, Rodri, about continuing to listen. I think when we spoke with the cluster last time, I think my only concern was there was a hint that maybe there was an awful lot of work. I think my concern is that there's so much work. That's why they're clubbing together. It's great that they're clubbing together and helping each other out if needed. My only concern or slight worry with that is it because there's so much work that they feel they have to all get together to help each other out because they almost can't cope with it all?
I think the pressure of work is one that we are aware of, and obviously that there is plenty of national discussion, but also we're looking at a local level. We've been working with our schools to look at what that burden is looking like, and seeing what we as a local authority can do to support our schools in that area. I think I'd probably turn the cluster work the other way, whereas none of us are ever experts in everything that we do, and I think we're very lucky in Swansea that we've created an environment in the education profession where the sharing is really important. The strong clusters that we see, it's, yes, of course, you're absolutely right. Every day is full, and there's challenges that come left, right, and centre in our schools, and we know that. However, what we see with the cluster working is rather than everybody trying to do everything, you are taking what's worked in another area, looking at how that will work in your own schools, because every school's different, as we know, and every child that walks in through those doors has specific needs that the teachers are trying to meet on a daily basis. But what we're hopefully seeing in that cluster work is making the most of the really good work. And when things aren't working, the cluster working works well there as well. And we have that honest way, like the Ponce cluster that came to yourselves were honest with you. They're honest with each other as well, actually saying, this hasn't worked for us, or we tried this and it didn't work. Has anybody got a different way of doing it? So I think you're right to raise the pressure that the teaching profession is under. I would always looking to work with our head teachers and our schools to minimise that. But I would throw it on the positive side that the cluster working is more of a positive led model than not, if that's
yeah, and I think as long as they can feel heard, isn't it, and that the support is there for them should they need it, and most importantly, then yeah, that's great. Thank you.
Great, thanks, Angela. I've got Robert raising his hand here, and then Helen Morgan-Rees.
Yes, I just echo what Rodri was saying. This whole cluster approach is one element in what we want as a strengthened system. It builds the capacity of the whole system here in Swansea. It builds the resilience of the system. And looking back over the say 5 or 6 years. One of the approaches which the old Policy Development Committee was keen to develop was ways of sharing practice across schools in Swansea, ways of enabling each schools to access expertise from elsewhere. For instance, a database of where expertise lay, a database of curriculum links and so on, so that people knew where to go to access support. So that whole system approach is something that we want to develop in Swansea. It's part of the answer, as you say, to capacity issues. Is not the only answer, but I think it is an important ingredient in it.
Great, thank you. Helen.
Thanks, Chair. Yes, Councillor O'Connor asks a very important question, really, in terms of the purpose of clubbing together. And I think the biggest mutual benefit of coming together is that shared understanding of pupil progress that Rodri alluded to. And it is very much a seamless curriculum. And this is how the new curriculum is different to the old one. It's that aspect of when you go to a secondary school that there is less to be concerned about in terms of transition because of that shared understanding of pupil progress. So that's a real benefit for working together as a cluster. And also I'd like to supplement the response Rodri gave really earlier to your question, Chair, on how we consider the support to teachers. And I reflected on that question before coming today, because I know you've consistently asked that question before. And it is not leaving people behind. And I was thinking, what is the thing that we've got now that we didn't have then that ensures that we don't leave our teachers behind? And that is the vision. So our leaders across all our schools in Swansea consistently have been asked very clearly to draw the vision for their curriculum together and to share that with internal stakeholders and parents and the wider community. And I think setting out those expectations clearly in terms of vision is really supportive to staff, because if staff know what's expected of them and how those steps will be taken, I think that's a really helpful act. And what our school improvement team has done has been monitoring as a real line of questioning, particularly in the autumn term of this academic year. They've been asking at all our schools, what is your vision? How have you set about sharing that vision? So I think that's brought about greater consistency of staff expectation.
Great, thank you very much for that. Gosh, I couldn't believe you'd anticipate that question, but there we go. Could I do one point that Rodri made, and when Eston visits schools, there are very few questions, obviously, around the curriculum, you said. Obviously, they don't visit all schools, so are the recommendations that they've raised in a few, are they there for the many as well?
Yes, absolutely. You'd swear you've been a fly on the wall, Chair. Yeah, it's a piece of work that the team see as a key part of what we develop here in Swansea and the support that we give our schools. So every single report that we get from Eston is something that we look at collectively as a team, and we look at what we can learn across a piece on that. And what we've done as well is look beyond Swansea and look across Wales to see where the themes are. So, for example, there's a strong theme around leadership and self-evaluation. So that's what's then led to 2 full days of bringing schools together. And it was obviously something that the schools wanted and needed because of the sheer numbers that gave their time and came along to those days. And then after the first date, and there's a further date next week, the positive response we got to that, in that when self-evaluation can be a process that can be quite daunting. We see it in the local authority, and we see it in our schools. But having a collective plan, or a collective sort of template that sort of keeps us going and know how we go about that, and having the support of our school improvement team, then allows those schools to plan accordingly, rather than think, oh, Eston to come in, I need to start working on that self-evaluation. Self-evaluation then becomes normalised within the day-to-day business of your school, and doesn't become that big burden on a school. It becomes part of how you learn about the impact that you're having on the children in the classroom. So to bring it back to your question, it's absolutely right that every single time we get a report, specifically in Swansea, we learn from it and share that with our schools. but also looking at the patterns and the learning throughout Wales to see how we can keep improving.
Great, thank you very much. Are there any other questions? Can't see any hands up. So could I thank, I was going to say the teaching staff, but it's not just the teaching staff, it's team education across Swansea for the work that they're doing in every school and what you're doing at the centre, because I think it's all part of that journey. You're all working very hard, and we do appreciate the enormous amount of work that it has been to deliver this. So big thanks, and if you could pass that on to the staff in the schools as well, because we are really grateful. It is key to the future of our children in Swansea, but so thank you very much indeed. Right, the next item on the agenda is the education Estin inspection, which took part. In fact, I remember Robert and I sitting over there and, you know, for a little while with a big spotlight on us with answering questions and, of course, individual interviews afterwards. So really to talk about progress with the recommendations. And with that, it's obviously Robert, there's Helen, and could I welcome Sarah, who's head of education strategy. So I don't know who's going to go first. There we are, Sarah.
Thank you. So we last provided a progress update back in December. So this is obviously sort of 6 months on really, and takes our progress up until the recent half term. So last time we reported on the progress, we sort of outlined the sort of key post-16 strategies that was under the first recommendation to look at post-16 provision. And there were sort of 3 key strands to that strategy. So the first one was around ensuring we deliver high quality provision to support our learners with their transition from secondary school into post-16, and also to develop their employability skills for their future careers. So some of the sort of key sort of highlights really in terms of progress there is firstly a memorandum of understanding has been developed around transition for school leavers in Swansea, and that's in partnership with our post-16 providers and Careers Wales, and the plan is for that to be ready for the next academic year to be in place. And alongside that then, so all head teachers and senior leaders of our sixth form schools have had discussions about the learners who intend to stay in their sixth forms can access provision that's most suited for them. So that's sort of progress under that area. And then we talked about previously around timetables for learners, and perhaps joining up resources and sort of time there. So this was looked at between our sixth form schools and the college, and it was determined that that wasn't really feasible on a county level. However, in our sixth form schools, on an individual basis, there were opportunities to look at that. And the next step there really is to look at a cross sixth form working group really to explore the potential for that a bit further moving forward. So in a recent scrutiny meeting, my colleague David Borden presented around some of the Learner Voice survey work around the voices of children and young people, and that survey has just now come to a close at a really high response rate, with over 200 responses from our sixth form learners, and so the next step now, which will happen now over this final half term now, will be to analyse really some of the messages that have come from that survey, and there was also some smaller focus groups that took place as well, and really considered those quieter voices. So that survey enabled anyone to answer in their own time. They were able to scan a code, you know, on a poster, you know, so they could do that in a way that was more comfortable for them, really. So that enabled everybody to have a voice. So one of the things that we will be analysing as part of that survey is opportunities for potentially to have online and hybrid models of delivery as well as the traditional classroom model. So once that's taken place, suitable courses, if there are opportunities, could potentially be offered from September 2024. So that's another avenue to widen the provision offer in sixth forms. And then a range of professional learning activities are taking place with both our further education college and our sixth form schools, on a range of different topics. And again, getting the college and sixth forms learning together, you know, having that opportunity to network as well. our sixth form schools have received some transition funding, and that it is to build collaboration relationships beyond the schools with the colleges, our learning providers in the workplace, and also local employers and businesses to again look at those opportunities beyond school. And Careers Wales are also involved to support that work as well. So moving on to post 18 then, so beyond post 16, so the Serin Academy delivers sessions and opportunities to our current sixth form and college students, the offers that they can give there, but also the Reach and Wider partnership. They aim to inspire and raise aspirations for young people that may typically not consider university education or higher education, and so potentially sort of deprived areas, looked after children, and so they have been working, they've presented, you know, some of the progress they've made there, and that work is ongoing as well. And then, you know, at a strategic level then, so the universities are working with the sort of partnership board to look at post-16 provision and progression opportunities. And one of those strands is the health and well-being strand under the Skills and Talent Initiative. And there's a mapping of progression routes to take place now that looks at how we can sort of look at those careers from pre-16, so in school, right through to higher education. So that's a summary of the work under the post-16 strand. So I don't know if you wanted to pause there or whether you wanted me to go through the Welsh medium section next.
Do you want,
I'll carry on?
Carry on. And
No problem.
Take the questions at the end. Thank you very much.
So the next recommendation was around strengthening our Welsh medium provision across all ages and areas of the local authority. So we mentioned last time that we had our Welsh and Education Strategic Plan that was submitted to Welsh Government, and that's a 10-year plan for Welsh medium education. Since then, we have developed a 5-year delivery plan which focuses on the detail, really, what detailed work streams need to take place to start delivering against the wider aims of that plan. And we will be submitting our first annual progress report in July, so there'll be some further updates at the next scrutiny around this. So firstly, we have a partneriaeth addysg Gymraeg Abertawe, that's our Welsh and Education Partnership, and that has membership from a range of partners, including the university, Mudiad Maithrin, the colleges, education officers and schools. It's a wide partnership looking at all different ages in Welsh medium education. And that starts from the early years, so ensuring that there are opportunities for Welsh medium interest as well as provision from that outset. And so we're working with the Mudiad Maithrin to look at sort of potential areas in Swansea where we can strengthen that provision, and that work is ongoing. We're also looking at the latecomers provision, so where learners start Welsh medium education not at nursery, sort of later on in their education, and there are 2 pilots currently taking place, both at primary and secondary age, to look at how we can deliver that in Swansea in the future. They run to the end of this academic year, so following that we will evaluate how that provision, you know, that additional provision to support latecomers has gone, and how that will look moving forwards. But also a leaflet has been developed to support families as well who have children in Welsh medium schools. They may not speak Welsh themselves, and how they can support their children even if they're unable to speak the language. So Rodri's covered the Charter Iaith and its purpose, so I won't repeat that. But just to note, really, Gowerton, we said they're only the second secondary school in Wales to achieve that award, so that's a notable achievement there, isn't it? And in terms of our marketing, how do we promote Welsh medium education? We've been looking at that, you know, how are we doing that? And we have added some additional information to our Swansea Council website, but there is some further enhancements that will be on by the end of term. The work there is ready to go. It just needs to be uploaded onto the website. And that will include, again, information for families, how they can support their children. Perhaps that's a barrier to them enrolling their children into Welsh medium schools. In terms of ALN, so Kate Phillips has given an ALN update, and Welsh medium provision support for learners with ALN is a key factor in the WESP as well. It's the outcome 6. And in terms of looking ahead, in terms of that work stream, that transformational work stream about suitable specialist provision in Swansea, ALN has a specific work stream in that. Welsh medium has a specific work stream in that too. So everything is joined up. And then just to note really, finally, I think one of the key barriers or challenges to delivering this plan is around staffing. And this goes from early years to ALN and staffing in schools. So there's a working group looking at supporting that really, and how we can promote the benefits of Welsh medium careers at a very early age, so that when learners are in our current Welsh medium schools can consider how they can use their Welsh language skills to support future learners as well. So that's a key piece of work that will be critical to the success of the plan moving forward as well.
Great. Well, thank you very much. There's a lot of information in there, and so thank you very much, Sarah. Are there any questions? Did I come in with one, and then Robert, do you want to mention anything? And I can see, sorry, I can see Helen as well. So before I come in, let's Helen and Robert. Helen.
Thanks, Chair. Just to mention as well that Estyn, our regulator in education, do visit us on a termly basis, and in the last fortnight the focus of the meeting really was focusing on those 2 recommendations they gave us. So that report was published in September, and they were very keen and quick really to try and appreciate what progress we'd made, and I think overall they were fairly pleased. We haven't had a report to verify that, but in conversation with Mike Hayes, our local authority link inspector, who you mentioned earlier, he was quite supportive of the actions we've taken so far.
Thank you very much. Any other questions? Robert,
the only comment I'd make, and Sarah's given us an excellent overview of the work that's gone on. It is just, I think, under a year since Estyn were here, and I know how nerve-wracking an experience that always is. Again, the amount of work that's going on, the amount of working with other agencies, other bodies is essential if we're going to meet the recommendations made by Estyn, and that is hard work. It involves partnership working, and it involves creating those relationships. And I think what Sarah described in the report there, we are putting those in place and building the capacity to respond on both post-16 and the development of Welsh medium education in Swansea.
Great, thank you very much. What I was going to say, Sarah, you mentioned 200 responses from 6th form learners, and what sort of percentage was that?
I'll respond following the meeting with the specific how many are currently in 6th form and how many responded. Yeah.
Okay, no, great, fine, thanks. And but certainly 200 people getting back with that is a good response rate for that. I have to say, is there a possibility that you can share, and without putting names to them, that you could share some of those responses with members of this panel?
Yeah, I shouldn't see any issue with that, and certainly there'll be an analysis of all of the responses, so that potentially will be useful as an update as well.
Great, fine, thank you very much. And if there aren't any other questions, I can't see any hands up, we can move on. Can I thank you very much for coming along, and a really comprehensive report on both on the updates since the Estyn inspection. So thank you very much. And the next item on the agenda is key issues affecting education. We always do this at this time of year to look forward to see what are going to be the main issues, and these are over to Robert and Helen. I don't know who's going to go first.
I'll just introduce the item again then, and thank Helen for compiling this. Again, a comprehensive file that brings together the different responsibilities of the Education Directorate, and in each of the areas it'll have its own sets of challenges that will need to be addressed this year and in the medium term. So over to Helen, I think, will lead us through the PowerPoint, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor.
Helen.
So you've seen this PowerPoint presentation in your bundle of papers for today's meeting. So I'm hoping you've had a chance to have a look at them. So I just canter through and put a little bit of meat on the bones, if that's okay, Chair, just to elaborate on some of the points. So I've tried to summarise the actual key matters currently into 8 overarching areas, and underneath each of those 8 areas there are key considerations for us in the education department, in the schools, and how we interact with, as Robert Smith said, our external partners, but how we support really some of these key issues as well. So some of them are opportunities, some of them are risks, some of them are quite challenging, but we are getting a degree of success across nearly all of those 8 areas. So to start with removing barriers for learners, scrutiny panellists will recall going back during the pandemic time, if you were a scrutiny panellist at that point in time, you will recall that we noted some emerging issues that we sensed that were happening because of the global pandemic. And since that time, we've recognised that some of those barriers to learning have indeed increased, have probably got worse, and we haven't seen the full effect of some of those barriers on our learners even now. So without sounding too depressing, I'd just like to focus on some of the key areas that we are working on and the areas that matter most to us. So obviously we heard about the new curriculum this afternoon. It's ensuring that we've got that breadth of cross-curricular opportunities, that enriched curriculum, a curriculum that's purposeful and engages our learners so they want to come to school and they realise that this will open the doors to their future careers and occupations. The targeting of support that we provide to our most vulnerable learners in Swansea continues to be a key consideration, and that is both for vulnerable learners in Kate Phillips's area, but also the one disadvantaged in terms of economy and the current cost of living crisis. So that is a key focus area for us to support our schools in supporting families who are facing financial difficulty as well. We've heard about the ALN code this afternoon, but we also have to focus really on aspiration, because in a crisis situation, we have to come out in a recovery mode, and our means of recovery really is thinking about the destinations of our learners. So with that in mind, our corporate plan really reflects in education skills that we've got a key strategy there that is called the Designing Destination Strategy. We've heard about curriculum collaboration this afternoon, but we're also focusing on vocational opportunities, and you'll be pleased to hear, Chair, strengthening links with employers as well in and around Swansea, and there's more to come really on our future plans for that. Obviously, some of the traumatic experiences, not just because of a global pandemic, but because of society changing and posing real difficult situations for some of our youngest learners, we find that supporting the system to be more trauma informed and to be a trauma informed school is something that we need to continue to work and build on. And the collaboration with our colleagues in social services, child and family services in particular, to support families at the earliest opportunity possible continues to be a key focus in terms of our collaboration internally. So turning to the curriculum itself, you've heard a lot this afternoon already about the curriculum, but in terms of ensuring that we have well-being, which is at the heart of the new curriculum, we need to ensure that it's not just our learners that are benefiting from learning about how to be fit and healthy, but also ensuring that our practitioners remain well enough to be able to deliver the curriculum. So that is a key focus for us as well. So as Rodri alluded to earlier, we are very much supporting schools to be learning organisations, to open their doors and windows to learn from each other, not just at a cluster level, but on an international level as well, globally. So many of our teachers and head teachers have benefited from international visits and UK visits through the work of our regional partnership in Partneriaeth. But indeed, number 7 there on this element is key, because you cannot create an environment of community focused schools without focusing on a purposeful curriculum, a curriculum that has employment at its heart as well, and employability skills. So this really is about giving schools the opportunity to have greater parental engagement and to talk about aspiration, to talk about intergenerational unemployment, and to raise aspirations for all. So it's not just about pupils, but it's about family learning as well. And we've heard how important it is to consider the voice of learners this afternoon, not just through surveys, but through face-to-face engagement and listening to their voice really in creating choices for how they learn and what they learn. Turning to the next one, an inclusive education, absolutely important. You heard Kate speak about the universal offer around additional learning needs. Well, additional learning needs for us is one part of a spectrum of inclusivity in Swansea. Being an inclusive school means that we have to promote the idea of diversity and to have that mutual tolerance and respect. And we are very much working behind the scenes to ensure that our schools get a good diet really of support across a range of areas, not just relationships and sexuality education, but religion and values and ethics as well. So we need to understand our communities in all of this, because there are sensitivities that we are aware of. So we are trying to promote in a very sensitive and sensible way. But these areas are key areas for us to ensure that we have an inclusive education. Sufficiency of place, point 7 there, is absolutely key. If we don't have enough specialist places in Swansea to meet learners' needs, then we will do them a disservice. So we have to plan accordingly. So we are planning our next kind of 10-year plan to see where we ensure we have sufficient places in Swansea. And that very matter, actually, just to join the dots, is being considered by the new Service Transformation Committee that met yesterday. And I think we vowed in that committee to have a read across between this panel and that committee. So it's good that I'm talking about it today. So turning then to our 4th key issue in education, it's on everybody's lips. It's the management of resources, and how do we deal with shrinking budgets in real terms across schools, and how do we try and do as much as we've been doing potentially with less resource. Obviously grant funding does help, but it's not always a permanent fixture. So we have to manage really the main core funding provided to schools, how grant money complements that, but certainly we are expecting schools to be very judicial with the use of their reserve levels. We know that reserves in Swansea have been very high historically, but that reserve level is coming down rapidly. So schools are using their reserves, meaning that the whole system really is potentially shrinking in terms of the amount of money that we've got compared to the cost of things, not just staff costs, but utility costs and all of the considerations really. One of the elements around resource management obviously is not just about the money, it's about how we support the human resources we've got. Point 5 there is particularly pertinent. Rodri mentioned that we are experiencing industrial action currently. That industrial action that we are seeing in the primary school sector in the main is around not necessarily pay, but more to do with workload. And indeed, one of the key asks really around that is to consider the workload impact on school leaders. Now that national kind of resolution of that dispute is happening, but at a local level in Swansea, we very much want to listen to what our leaders have to say about this and to try and do something that is helpful and discernible to them now. So there have been 3 workshops with our head teachers recently, and I think there will be an opportunity soon to share that across council managers and heads of service, just to raise awareness really of the burdens that schools are facing. So I won't dwell too much. It's there. It's it speaks for itself really in terms of some of those issues. Just want to dwell on the leadership issues that we are facing currently. And for us as a local authority, we very much see our role in supporting schools to undertake their core purpose. And their core purpose really in terms of school leadership is to maintain and improve standards in their schools for their pupils, for the learners. But sometimes we do have distractions. The global pandemic was one of them, if I can call it a distraction. But trying to support leaders in schools to do their job, that is our public service really as an education department. But we have what's incumbent upon us is to also ensure that we have a good pipeline of developing leaders. We do that in partnership with the region, Partneriaeth, but we do it as well by supporting the system internally in Swansea, affording opportunities for deputy heads to have a secondment in another Swansea school to create greater opportunity and experience for them. All kinds of things happening to ensure that we grow our own leaders. We're also clarifying things for them. We're producing useful tools for them to do their jobs, handbooks, collating policies in one single place. All of this helps allow them to fulfil their core purpose and their duties. But as I said earlier, we can't do this in a vacuum. That partnership, that collaboration with our schools, despite some of the industrial action difficulties we're facing, we're still trying to listen to the profession to ensure that we meet the needs, because without good, strong leaders, both at a governing body level and managerial level, then we will not have good outcomes in Swansea. So where help and support really is most effective is, as I said, if we provide good tools for people to do their jobs. So that practical support for us is a key consideration. That said, there is intense support when things don't go as well as they could do in our schools, and that is always afforded to our leaders. So for us, it's knowing our schools. As a local authority, we must know our schools. We must understand their support needs, and we must provide a proportionate response to that need as well. I won't mention collaboration because that's been discussed already. The performance of our schools obviously is a key consideration, and the performance landscape has changed. Historically, this panel, for example, has focused very much on data and what school performance looks like, how it compares to other local authorities, how it compares in the region, how it compares to the rest of Wales. That landscape has changed a lot. So the focus really, and I think there's a word missing, to apologise, but the focus on support really by the local authority is how we look at the performance of schools, not to beat them up with any kind of sanction and say they're underperforming, but how do we use the support really around those results that they're getting to inform that proportionate response I talked about earlier. So we've got to be careful really that Welsh Government requirements have changed in terms of what's published, what's not, but it doesn't mean that there are no key performance indicators this panel will be able to consider in the future. There is something to look at, but not in the same way as we have done historically, so just to be mindful of that. So I'll turn next to the penultimate slide, which is focusing really on what we mean by community-based learning and community-focused schools. And there are three strands to this. And the first one is getting families more engaged with their own child's learning. That's a key component. The second really is for schools to draw upon groups within the community to create far greater partnerships, including with employers, to support them as a learning organisation. And the third strand then is where it's needed. This may not suit all schools in Swansea, but certainly to ensure that there is co-location with wider services and interventions where it's required. So it's very simple really, but I think there's been a lot of misunderstanding particularly from our schools really, about what community focused schools mean. It doesn't mean that you are giving them wraparound care, pupils wraparound care. It doesn't mean that you're doing after school clubs. It's a far deeper and wider consideration of how the community can really support the child. And then finally, for today's presentation, just wanted to focus really on the importance of Welsh and how it's a language that belongs to all of us really, and how the education system and landscape is changing in terms of not just attitudes to Welsh, but legislation. And there is a white paper that's currently being consulted upon. I think that consultation is ending tomorrow, if I'm right. I can't remember the exact date, but soon. And the essence of that white paper really is setting down that equal opportunity really for any child by the time they get to the end of school age at 16, that they are afforded an equal opportunity to be able to communicate. Now, if you think about Welsh, it's been a requirement in all schools for the last 27 years, I'm told. But if you think at, has every child at the age of 16 had that equal opportunity to be as bilingual in Wales as any other child? I think there's disparities there. It's not consistent. So in some schools, it's really worked and has been a consistent offer for the last 27 years. In others, not. So there will be potentially some statutory targets around this that we will face as a result of the passage of the white paper onto legislation, if that happens. So something to look out for. As Sarah alluded to in her slot, she talked about the marketing, the promotion, the sharing of information with parents, with prospective parents in schools of what Welsh language can mean. But it's about bilingualism really, and it's about selling the benefits of bilingualism. It's not about setting one sector against another sector. It's about affording information and opportunities. Historically, we haven't had the power to our elbow to do that piece of marketing, but it's now become a norm and an expectation, and no doubt we will be held to account really about that objective that Sarah spoke about. So I'll finish sharing if that's okay, and I'll try and come out and stop to answer questions.
Great, thank you very much, Helen. There we go. Have we got you coming back onto the screen?
Still trying, just having to think about it. I think that's it.
Okay.
Thank you.
There we are. No, that's great. Are there any questions to Helen? Sorry, I can't see any hands up. Could I, first of all, Helen in the messages here said that in fact it wasn't 200 responses. In the end, it was 317 responses, which is well, nearly that is a very good response rate in any survey, I can tell you. Yes, and I think you could probably tell the Public Service Board what you're doing, because when they did a response the other day, there was a handful of responses, and wow, 317. So really well done. You mentioned, Helen, in your presentation about in the area around the curriculum about aspiration, that was vital, and I think that is vital for children right across the schools, and also building better relationships with employers as well, because it's about, I always think of education as a journey into work and into their life's career and so on, and job for life. And so that was really important. I was very pleased to hear you saying that. And the other thing is, which is something all councillors can do as governors, and that is to make sure that your schools are involved with the community. And I certainly do really all sorts of things, like we're having, I know, a litter pick shortly on the 3 beaches in the ward. and I'm sort of used a little bit of my community fund to buy them an ice cream later on in Caswell Bay. And you know, but things like that, and also getting involved with the elderly, where they're going out singing carols at Christmas and all the rest of it. But it's a real opportunity to involve them and show how they are feeling. They can feel valued by members of the community as well. So I think we have a job there. So I was very pleased to hear you saying that. So, any case, are there any questions to Helen? Otherwise, could I thank you very much for that really comprehensive overview of where we are. Thank you very much indeed. Right, and the next item on the agenda, I've just thrown these over here, is the draft work programme. And I don't know if you've all had a chance to have a look. Our next meeting, quite important, meaty points about school attendance and school inclusion. And that has been difficult after the pandemic, because it's getting those children back to school. And in some cases, it's the confidence for those children to go back to school. So those are obviously very important. But has anybody got any comments about the work programme? No, can't see any hands up. So are you quite happy to, oh, I beg your pardon, James.
Hi, yeah, hopefully you can hear me. It was just one question. I just prepping for this meeting. I was just looking through some bits and bobs, and I don't want to go into the specifics of it, but I spotted that there'd been some industrial action in Cliddock Primary School relating to a specific issue in that school. Obviously, I don't want to go into that because that may well still be investigated. But it did occur to me: is there any mechanism where we can look at, say, is there a procedure, or were there any failings on the local authority level in issues like that? Is it a good opportunity for us to maybe look at some of our procedures? Because it seems to be that members of staff were trying to report things about other members of staff, and maybe there's something we could look at in conjunction with that. Is this an appropriate forum to raise that sort of issue in as part of ongoing scrutiny? The union is certainly alleging that there are failures on the local authorities' part. So I was wondering, is that something that scrutiny should review? We can have a look at it, and if there aren't, there aren't. But if there are, at least we can offer some suggestions for improvement.
Look, certainly, I think it's something that if there have been failings, it is something that we should look at, and maybe we could put that into the programme during the course of the year. Should we have a look at that and get back to you in the next meeting, James?
Well,
about that, and I've got Robert putting his hand up here.
All I wouldn't stand in your way, and I think any input is valuable. All I would say is that myself and officers are looking at these very issues now. What are the processes? What are the policies, and are they fit for purpose? So this is ongoing work anyway. But I certainly think we'd be happy to keep you in the loop of what we're doing as well. Moving forward, because I think it is important that we learn from experiences like this, and that'll help us to get it right for the future.
Great, thank you. Well, James, we'll have a look at that and get back to you at the next meeting. And I can see Helen putting her hand up as well.
Yes, similar response. I don't want to put a blocker on anything, but we need to be really cautious here. There are ongoing HR confidential sensitive investigations around the school. I think it would be inappropriate for us to bring this into the public domain, but happy to have a private conversation with any panelist at any time.
Yeah, sorry, when I said we were looking at things, it's not specifically in Cliddock, we're looking at policies and processes across the board. I should make that absolutely clear.
Okay, James, we'll have a look at that then, okay, and we can talk about it at the next meeting in general terms, but not specific. Yeah,
just to clarify, Chair, I totally understand that particular issue we can't raise because everyone needs to have their fair say. But it maybe is an opportunity to check in the more general case that we feel all our procedures are up to date. So yeah, please don't come back on that specific case if it's not appropriate, but the more general case was what I was looking for. Thank you.
Yeah, great, fine. We'll certainly look at that and report back at the next meeting. Any other points on the draft work program so we can make it the work program? Everybody okay? No hands up. There we are. Okay, that's fine then. And and that almost brings us to the end of the meeting. One point that Councillor Mike Dirk, I was at the Education and Skills Service Transformation Committee yesterday, and he did ask, he's obviously not a member and can't be a member of this committee, but what he would like to do, if possible, is to attend occasionally, because very often that committee is for developing policies for the future. And very often the past, and we are looking at how things are going, can actually inform the future and the present. And so I said I had no objection to that. And would you be quite happy for Mike to attend on an ad hoc basis, but obviously not as a member of this committee, but just attend occasionally?
I think procedurally, he should be able to attend as a general member of the public, so we can send him the link. Obviously, if he wants to partake in the meeting, it would be up to the chair to ask him to partake, because he won't be a member of the committee. But there's no problem on that procedurally.
Are you okay with that? Yeah, great. Because I think it's really good. It's joined up really, and I think that would be quite helpful. So I'll tell Mike about that. Listen, can I thank you all? Our next meeting is on the 13th of July, and look forward to seeing you then. And for some of us, safe journey home. Good to see you all. Bye.
Thank you.